Okay, so moving on from the test rig, plate 12. You can already tell from this wet pile of Play-Doh, because this ended up in the stream behind it, that this was a fail. That's not good. Ugh. Oh, gross. Straight in the trash with you. All right, sample 12. This actually managed to get itself hit with 2 rounds, and the reason for this is because this one ended up bouncing out of the test rig and I lost it in the long grass. So it's actually taken another round that's gone. So this was the round that was fired at it, I would say right in the middle, which failed. And then while it's actually been in the long grass after failure, it's actually managed to get hit by accident, which is how I managed to find it the second time. So the fact we managed to get 2 hits on this is purely fortuitous. Okay, so sample 12 is resin-impregnated fiberboard on the outside. Excuse me. Textured rubber. And then we have some Perspex, more resin-impregnated fiberboard. And the main, excuse me, I'm all itchy. The main part being like vinyl tile, moving on through, backing with 10.5 millimeters of acrylic. So let's cut this failure open. So even though this failed, just like so many have, because this one got hit twice, this is all the more interesting. But it's also, oh dear, it's all dropping a bit. Look at that. Okay, I'll have to admit this was a bit of fun. But deadly serious note, it's also really annoying because, again, the acrylic, which should have done well, did not. You know what, I strongly suspect this got clipped by a third one before I've recovered it, based on the evidence from that steel plate. Anyway, the hole we're interested in is this one here, so let's come back to this one. Okay, this is just a mess of shattered crud in the middle. Okay, the rubber, the evidence sheet, so to speak. Yeah, we did. Look, we clipped it with another one before I'd found it. So this was the round that I'd fired. We must have clipped it without knowing where it's in the grass behind the target area, and then the round that actually made me find it. So this one genuinely got hit 3 times. I couldn't really have asked for a better test if I tried to do this. Like a good hit, a marginal hit, and then a real edge hit. And that is reflected in this piece of, I'd like to get this out in one piece, in this piece of fiberboard. Come on. Unlike the rest of the resin-impregnated fiber, this one has not just exploded into crap. We have large failure holes. There's our, there's our orientation. Our Perspex, once more we're into the realm of 2 to 3 times the diameter of the round as the failure point. We've got some interesting crack pattern, just stick that back there. But you know what, even though this piece of Perspex is well and truly shattered, we've had one here, we've had the fair hit there, the marginal one, and the edge clip. And despite it being cracked, it's actually behaved exactly the same way each time. Perspex is a remarkable, reliable material in that sense, even if it does break a lot. I kind of like Perspex now. Another sheet of rubber. And then the inside of the very outer layer where the rounds have gone through. So 12 was a failure, but in failing, I suppose we found some interesting little features. I don't think much of that material. This 10.5 millimeter acrylic is seriously disappointing. The rubber is more interesting than anything else. So I'll keep these 2 bits of rubber. Definitely keeping that because I'm very happy with that. Bit of stainless steel, I forgot, not just normal steel, that's stainless steel. as a witness. 12 was a fail. Let's move. Okay, now for some real disappointment. This was sample 13, and as you can see by the shape, we actually had our sample plate on the inside. And we did not get a fair hit on this plate, which I am annoyed about. Instead, we got an edge hit, so it missed the main part, and unsurprisingly it failed. But as we are here, we shall cut it open and see what I did manage to learn from this, if nothing else. Okay, well, considering the total failure we've had so far with some of this hard vinyl tile, and that extra wedge at the front probably didn't cost me too much. But that's the vinyl tile and polypropylene frontispiece that I was hoping to get hit. Didn't. Instead, we effectively just hit our tile. Oh god. And in fact, we even managed to not make any useful contact with the backing piece either. This is what comes of using 3-inch test plates and then getting a 4-inch tile over the top. So I managed to miss that completely. That's most disappointing. I thought I'd got a viable result from that, and I'd forgotten that the additional plates inside it are 3mm. So I guess the only thing we can take from this is what happened to our polycarbonate sheet. Just like before, we can see there's no deformation in the plastic until we get to about there. So about whatever that is. Let's do that again. Come on, there, about there. So about 3 times the diameter of the round before it starts to actually deform the polycarbonate. But the rest of that, total fail. Okay, so 13 was a bust. 14, at least I managed to hit it. I got it right in the middle, and we still have a failure. This is exactly as it was with the polycarbonate backing piece hanging off. So let's take this apart and have a look at what we can see. But just before I cut it in there, we can see the back of, this is the artificial vitreous material. Let's cut that off because that's annoying. So we can see the plastic and the outer layer. This is the artificial vitreous material we've had. Just how much has actually come out from being hit as it's gone through. So it's, goodness me, it's created quite the hole. This is 50mm across in that way, well, and 50mm across that way. Wow. Again, yet another artificial vitreous material, which has been shockingly disappointing. Okay. Oh dear, what a mess. Okay. Tiles. Ha! Oh dear. Interesting. Oh, little vinyl tile donuts. And before we get to this, let's have a look at this polycarbonate. Look at that! That's such a small hole. It's a 7.62mm round. You should make a bigger hole than that. Ah, I'm tearing it. I'll leave it on here because otherwise it's going to tear. This is the outside. I don't know whether we can see it on camera. This is obviously the outside here, and where it's hit, it's actually bulged out. It's bulged out when it's being hit. And you can see the deformation cracking isn't it's been hit this way. The deformation cracking is that way. But we can see the same sort of thing here. Let's get this in the light. Most unusual. It's not entirely clear what's caused that. It's just the tile. Indeed, this shows the same sort of donutting. I don't know if donutting is a real word. Interesting. All right, there's no need to cut any more off because there's a full part. This was 8mm thick artificial vitreous material. This should have been nice and hard. This is the sort of thing people use for countertops. So this should have done well. And it has not done anywhere near as well as that nice piece of natural granite did. My goodness. Instead, this is just shattered. Had very poor cohesion at all. The only notable part is the exit through our polycarbonate friend. Let's see if we can get this off. Come on. Get off. That is most interesting. You can see the direction of travel. You can see how much it's deformed. There's no evidence that this led to any forward bulging. The cause of this forward bulging is most curious. I'm not entirely sure what caused that. There's no other material involved there other than vinyl tile and polycarbonate. And yet the polycarbonate, both pieces, show evidence of it. In fact, this vinyl tile shows evidence of that bulging effect as well. Back to vitreous. And this shows a very ragged exit hole, but definitely a very substantial exit hole as well. Not sure why that's there. So, we have a curious bulging donut to record. Other than that, 14 was a fail. Okay, well, we should be getting used to failure by now. We can see once more our Play-Doh backing piece has been thoroughly penetrated and destroyed. We've even got pieces of leather left in there. The piece of leather was not recovered. Plate 15. On the whole, it seems to be relatively intact compared to some of them. It didn't explode quite as badly. This was a piece backed with plywood. The main outer layer of this, once more, like so many, was vinyl tile, and the purpose once more was artificial vitreous material. So curses to you, artificial vitreous material, Mr. Quartz. You have let me down. Very disappointed in our artificial friend. Oh dear. Okay, right. Well, that was our backing piece. Again, the plywood's not really there to worry about its ballistic value per se, but more just as a stiffener. And it does seem to have done that. Okay, rubber piece beforehand. Now, let's think back to an earlier example of a piece of rubber. We can see tiny, tiny holes, much smaller than the diameter of the round as the hole in the rubber. Yet we're on this one, we have a very large ragged hole, and we have a lot of leftover from whatever vitreous material has been carried through. So I'll just cover the brand name there. Other brands of disappointing vitreous material are available. This is our this is our plastic here. And then we have our vitreous material here, which has utterly failed to live up to my expectations. 8mm of it, in fact, has simply shattered. Shouldn't really be a surprise. It's not really made for that, but again, did have high hopes because it is light and simple material. It see if I can get this off in one piece, because this should be, yeah, the flexible vinyl tile. We have rather a large ragged hole in that. I can only suppose that that's because when the rounds come in, some of it has been ejected backwards upon hitting this stuff. But either way, this was a complete penetration. And the only notable part is that it did start to do something, just like the other ones, but nowhere near enough for its weight. Again, very disappointing. This was a fail. Okay, so moving on from 15, we have sample 16. It does not sit flat, and that's because although we got a good hit on it, it was a failure. It has blown an enormous hole out through the back of the material. We have a lot of debris in there. We have a lot of sharp, jagged bits of metal as well. So just to be clear on sample 16. Sample 16 was a laminate. We have we have vinyl tile, the stiff type of vinyl tile, mixed with polypropylene, and lastly backed with aluminium. And we have definitely torn all our way through that, but let us dissect our way in and see if we have anything useful to learn from this. Okay, outer layer first. So this type of vinyl tile I used actually had a very thin backing of rubber because it's used as flooring material. Oh, sticky. You know what, that has been surprising. I mean, it hasn't done much, but it also hasn't shattered. It's held together quite well. We've got a skin surface, we have our vinyl in there, and then we have a rubber backing. I mean, the round hasn't had any trouble going through, for sure. But that has not shattered in the way the other pieces of vinyl have. So, and we have more pieces of this. Oh, let's see if I can get this up to light. Do you remember we had the donutting on a previous sample? Let's see if I can get the light around that. You can just make out that is a rib there that runs all the way around the outside. So this has bulged out. So as the round's gone in, it's been pushing the plastic back up again. I wouldn't go so far as to call that bulging effect of any value. I have no idea yet, but it's interesting. We've now noticed it in 2 samples, and that was definitely not something I even vaguely considered. Wrap these very tightly. I've got bits coming off. Come on, let me out. Let's take that off. No. I don't want that to fall apart. I want to be able to see it. There we go. Ah, goody. Okay, that's the backing cut off. I'm just holding it up on a piece of brick because it's all deformed. So as we go through it, now that outer layer piece of vinyl tile has a neat hole but didn't shatter, crack. This inner piece here, what is this? Oh, that's part of the outer skin. That's not to do with the bullet. We haven't found any bullet fragments through the armour so far, which is extremely disappointing because that was the whole purpose of these hard layers. Maybe if we can see that donutting there. It's very hard to see, but you can just make it out right here. You can just see it's risen up around it. Yeah, there's none on this one. As we go through these layers, the hole is getting bigger and raggeder, more raggedy. This will shut it. Well, that's quite a noticeable progression as the round has gone. Excuse me. Do this on camera. That's quite a noticeable progression as the round has gone through from the outer layer through these plastic, neither here nor there. You can see the energy has been traveling like this as it's gone through and it's been spread out. What's more interesting is the exit. Look at the size of that exit. Yeah, it's a piece of aluminium, and aluminium's nice and ductile, but holy cow. Just put those two together like that. So as the rounds come through here, I don't think I have. As the rounds come through like that, you can see the energy pattern around it. I would say that these have been substantially more effective than I'm giving them credit for. Because if it's spreading the energy like this, then logically that should be absorbing a shed load of energy from the round. Because when we think back to some other metal samples like the steel one, you can see the deformation is very localized and very severe. Now compare it to the aluminium. Yes, aluminium's softer, but again, stainless steel. The aluminium one has deformed substantially across a really wide area. This is 50 millimeters wide. We have 40 millimeters there. This is highly scientific. 18. About 12. And hopefully about 7. Yeah. 7.62. So that has spread out substantially across a very short area. You can almost track the angle of the energy transfer as it's gone through. That's about, you know what, that's not about, that is 45 degrees. 45 degrees on both sides as a cone of energy transfer. I'm very pleased with that. That might have failed, but that's taught me some interesting points. So anyway, let's move on. Okay, sample 17. As you can tell, another dramatic failure. We still have bits of leather and God knows what inside the Play-Doh. Toss that away. This one, just like a previous sample, had bounced out of the rig after it had been hit and was hit a second time when on the ground behind it. So I'm not really so much interested in the corner one. I am interested in that one. But then when we turn it over, there is devastation. There is not a lot inside 17. So 17 was meant to be one of the better ones. This should be, 10.5 millimeters of this acrylic material. Then we have our nice vitreous material in the middle there. This in fact is 15.5 millimeters of granite, and granite did very well in one of the previous samples. Backed with another 10.5 millimeters of this acrylic, and then our stiffener made from a piece of hardboard. And this utterly failed. I mean, is there even any point? I mean, we can't even see a decent path of the round from it, other than to say, hang on, let's stick that through there. As the round has come through, everything has gone. Everything has gone from it. I mean, let's be in no doubt about the power of bullets, because this has just completely devastated this whole sample. 12.5 millimeters of granite completely wrecked. And that, again, I had a good optimism for this. This sample I had hoped would give us those marginal results I talked about in a previous video, and instead we get nothing from it. We can't learn a fat lot from this, except to say that granite on its own, or granite rather backed with even this stuff, is hopeless. Alright, let's move on. Alright, sample 18. This is going to be quick. You can already see a whacking great hole through it. In fact, that's all that's left of the sample. This was an outer layer of steel backed with acrylic and tile. And Doesn't take much of a genius to figure out this was an utter failure, to the extent of there's basically none of this left. I was lucky to even find this. So when we've been talking about other samples which had exploded and become lost, this is one that had exploded and got found. I mean, we've got a nice big fat tear in the front where the round has gone through. This piece of steel. Oof. But this stuff, this should have been more effective. So we'll keep this one. 18 was a fail. Let's move on. Okay, 19, like 18, is a total fail, and like 18, there's basically nothing left of it. I mean, we have a couple of steel plates, we have our outer piece of vinyl, and this is all that's left of the backing plate. The entire center part of the plate is completely missing. Look, I can't begin to express the deformation on this thing. It's just crazy. But I promise you, I have not bent it. The good news, if anything, is it does actually appear to have succeeded at deflecting the round. But whether it's actually physically worked like that, or if it simply scooted it off, deflected it, is hard to tell, given how little of the material is actually left. So what this should have been 2 millimeters of vinyl tile, backed with stainless steel, and then more vinyl tile, and various layers of smooth rubber, and again backed in aluminium. So this is our aluminium backer, and you know, we have some various bits of serious aluminium deformation, but I don't think we've ever had anything quite as dramatic as that as a back plate. So I think it's fair to say aluminium might not be the best backing material to use, given how much it bends. Anyway, I didn't learn much from that. That's a fail. Let's move on. Okay, so sample 20. Unfortunately, we only managed an edge hit on sample 20. So we can't really, we've got a bit of vegetation in there. So it's going to be hard to determine whether that was a fair hit or not. I would say not. Either way, it has failed. So J is an outer layer of Perspex layered up with textured rubber, more Perspex, rubber, Perspex, rubber, Perspex, all the way, and then backed with a piece of aluminium. And as in the last one, we have some serious deformation in the aluminium. So let's cut our way in and see where we go from here. All right, so outer layer, Perspex. So I have actually kind of liked the Perspex material. It's done rather well. This would definitely have been available to protect from a second shot. We've lost an area, double the diameter of the round that's gone through, just like before, so at least Perspex is consistent. Rubber, a well-shattered piece of Perspex. Get off. The rubber's getting torn. This is hopeless. Rubber, Perspex. Let's just go for the backing piece. Okay, so by the time, let's put that back in there. We've got to the final layer of Perspex. We have a hole maybe 40 millimeters in diameter. Bearing in mind, we only hit on the edge there, so about 20 millimeters of a radius of effect from the exit of the round as it's gone through. So Perspex is reliable in the way it works. That's at least as good. Well, in fairness, the vitreous material is reliable. Reliably rubbish, but whatever. Let's get this piece of aluminium off and look at it. Trying not to cut myself. Ugh. Okay, so once more we had an edge hit up here, about this line. We have a good 15 to 20 millimeters of deformation from it. So we don't have deformation like this piece was. or even like this one, but it's not that dissimilar. I would say that this is more to do with the strength of the material, because this is not backed up with the diameter of the cracking on the Perspex. So this appears to be more to do with the nature of the aluminium to be drawn than anything else. Anyway, 20, failure. Let's move on.